had one guy who I already knew who was like a home inspector, and he had 50 grand to invest. And I asked him at the end of it, the referral question, and he said, yeah, I got a guy I used to tried to do a deal with like last year and ended up falling through, but he's kind of going to be our big money guy. I was like, oh, big money guy. And so he's in the oil and gas industry, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, do the warm introduction, have a phone call with this guy. At the end of that phone call, found out that dude had $3 million to invest.
This is the Multifamily Journey Podcast, show 19.
You're listening to the Multifamily Journey Podcast. In this show, you'll hear industry experts share tips of success and failure from their real estate investing journeys. You'll get a transparent look behind the curtain while you learn to fulfill the lifestyle you want to live and achieve your wealth goals. Get ready for the journey to financial freedom through investing in multifamily real estate. Here's your host, Blake Dailey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Multifamily Journey Podcast. This is your host, Blake Dailey, and super excited about this episode today. We recorded on the first week of the new year. I've been thinking a lot about the year ahead. I love this time of year because how you align your goals. And last week, I actually had an interview with John Plumstead, who's a performance psychology instructor at West Point, on top of being a super successful real estate investor. And he provided great information about reaching your goals by being focused on the process rather than the results. Meaning if you focus your actions and make those your motivations, the results you want are more likely to be achieved. And my wife and I actually just sat down for dinner just last night and went over our goals for the year, each of us individually, and then as a couple, and a lot of good came from it, kind of aligned our relationship with our lives. And that was really good stuff. So I just love this time of year because it makes you reevaluate and gain clarity on what you want that next year to look like. So if you haven't yet, go get a piece of paper and a pencil and write out your goals. And just hold on to it, look over it periodically. And when you get stuck, look back on that paper again and realign your actions to pursue your goals. So powerful stuff it's helped me a ton, just staying online and accountable to my goals. And today we have another good story of someone starting out 2021 strong. Josh Ferrari is the guest today, and he just closed his first multifamily property. It's a 42 unit in Mobile. And we dig all into that about the financing and the structure and the first raise and how he had challenges with this first deal, but also had learning lessons on closing that first deal. Now it's snowballed into has the second one under contract. But it's about him starting off strong, right? But it wasn't an instant success because this was 3 years in the making from when he got started in real estate and bought a small multifamily property before this and just kept compounding like small wins to get to this big deal. So really good stuff today. I think you'll like it. But before we get into that, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to get your questions asked on the show. I've talked about this before, but if you go to multifamilyjourney.com/podcast, you can input your information that you would like to be asked of the guest. I do that so it's not just me, but an expert in the field that will be asked live on the show. So one of those pieces of feedback led me to digging deeper into specific deals, and it's produced some really good information on the show. So if you have a burning question, or just, want to be featured on the show, head over to multifamilyjourney.com/podcast to input your question. And with that, let's get into the show. Joshua Ferrari, the man with the best name in multifamily investing. Welcome to the show.
Oh, man. I don't know about the best name, but I'm excited to be here, man. How you doing?
Who's got a better name than Ferrari? That's like 0 to 60 in like 2.7 seconds. And you just went from like 0 to 48 units in like no time. So this would be a good matchup.
In like no time. Yeah. I've actually only ever driven a Ferrari once. And
it's your car, man. You should have like access to the lot, right?
See, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I think I need to go to the lot and see if I can get a free one or like a 50% discount. Yeah. I don't know.
You just got to go up and say, hey, my great grandpa is Monsieur Ferrari, and you get a free one. But man, pumped to have you on the show. This is going to be a good one because we're going to dive into your most recent deal here, recent closing. But before we get into all that good stuff, why don't you tell people a little bit about you and how you got your start in multifamily?
Okay, so a little bit about me. There's so much to discuss. I'll just start right from the real estate thing. So I never thought that I'd ever be in real estate. Never thought I'd ever be in finance, in anything. I always just thought I was going to work W-2 till I was like 65. Kind of climbed the corporate ladder as an aircraft technician, which is my day job, and just do the thing, buy some land, go hunting.
The normal path.
Yeah, get in tons of debt. I was just okay with being in debt. That was just the way it was going to be. Well, then one day, about 3 years ago, my parents called me and they said that they were getting ready to start something new. I was like, all right, what are you getting ready to start? They're like, well, we're going to start flipping houses. And, growing up, we had watched HGTV and I just was like, that'll never be me, whatever. They're super wealthy. They're on freaking TV. They obviously have a ton of money. That's not going to be me. But then they said that they were going to start flipping. And I said, how? Tell me about this house flipping thing you're getting ready to start doing. They started telling me like, we're going to make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a flip, blah, blah. It's going to take a couple months, maybe 6 months to make this kind of money. And the wheel started spinning. I'm like, I don't even make that kind of money in a year. And you guys are going to make it in like a few months. There's no way.
That's how it starts. You get that little taste.
Yeah. And then I don't normally talk with my parents on the phone for too long. It's usually like 15, 20 minutes. It's catching up. Hey, how you doing? whatever. The pleasantries.
Yeah. This phone call, mom like mine who calls like every day or multiple times a day, and you got to keep it to like 3 minutes. Like, Mom, we just talked.
Well, this particular phone call was like 3 or 4 hours. It was so deeply intriguing. And then at the end of the phone call, my dad ended up giving me that. He sent me that little purple book, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I read it, and it was. Oh, I'm sure it's up there. And it was
it's up on the shelf. If you're not watching, I was like pointing behind me. That's how everybody starts, it seems.
Was life-changing. Just the mindset shift. And then after that, started listening to podcasts, reading books. I originally got my start in wholesaling, figured out that really wasn't for me, and didn't actually get into syndication or multifamily, I should say, until I went to a local real estate meetup. Where my now mentor was actually speaking on multifamily syndication. And I kind of talked to my wife prior to that on what we call our vision trip that we have once a year, right at the end of the year, and talked about kind of where we wanted to be and figured out, reverse engineering, how long it was going to take us to get there in single family, figured out that wasn't going to work. And then it just so happened that next January or February was when he was coming to speak on multifamily syndication. And I was like, this is it. This is perfect. Found out we had aviation in common. We clicked right off the bat, and he's really been my mentor ever since. A month later, I bought a fourplex, and we did that. We've had the fourplex now for about 2 years, and then it wasn't until about a week or two ago that we finally closed on our first large 42-unit multifamily syndication with another one already under contract before we even closed that one. So
there you go. I love that, man. So it sounds to me like you read the same information or had the same information that a lot of people have, but the difference is you acted on it, took action, and went out and made it happen. Like, how many copies of Rich Dad, Poor Dad have sold, and how many people got into real estate because of it, but how many just sit on the sidelines, right? And I think all this was like right before your 40th birthday too, right? Like, you're about to have a midlife crisis and just said, I got to do something. That's how it worked out, right?
Got to do something. I was 20 years old when I initially had the peaked interest in real estate.
Yeah.
Just moved out of my parents' house and had moved to Mobile because I'm from Memphis. Moved 6 hours away, no family around me. Jumped into it.
Yeah. And I love that, man, because it's inspiring. It shows others what's possible. And in those 3 years, a lot happened and allowed you to progress to this point to where you're now comfortable to, first of all, even like chase after a 42 unit, let alone get it under contract and close one. And now you got the next one already. And this is within a couple years, you're 23, almost 24 now.
I'll be 24 in 6 days. I don't know when this airs.
Yeah, so I just turned 24 this month ago. Well, November, so 2 months ago now. So we're right there. I got my first commercial multifamily deal under contract. So we're both young guys getting after it. I don't know if like the combined age of people on podcasts have had this many units under contract. I don't know. We won't get into that. Maybe we'll put it in the show notes. But no, man, I think that's cool because I think when you get that bug early, right, it sets you up to get to your goal sooner because everybody gets into it to, achieve financial freedom and spend more time with their family, take those trips with your wife. And my wife and I just took a trip this past week too. So, I mean, that stuff is fun. Like, you want to enjoy your life. So that's why people want to get into it, because real estate, and I think you agree, is very much a business that you can do on your terms and match to your lifestyle rather than match your life off of your business. So I love that. And that you got started so early in it. And you mentioned in there, like, why multifamily? Was it just to get there sooner, like get to the bigger numbers, or why'd you want to do that instead of flipping houses?
Right. So I never really liked flipping houses. Like I like to see it on TV, but I just didn't think I would actually enjoy flipping a house. And so when we bought the fourplex, we did a house hack / syndication model. And I was really able to, what is a house hack / syndication? Please break that down. The syndication side of it was I raised money from my parents and my brother-in-law to buy the property, and they got a certain percentage of equity in it because of it. And then the house hack was I lived in one of the units and rented out the other 3. So it was such a unique
awesome.
combination.
Was this like an FHA or something like that, where you had to put like a small amount down, and that's what you
did? 203K FHA loan.
Oh man, like the best. I mean, it could be a pain in the butt from what I hear. But.
So I guess to go back to the initial question of kind of reverse engineering why we decided to go into multifamily versus flipping houses, I realized really quickly after buying this fourplex that I did not want to be renovating. I did not want to be dealing with contractors. I didn't want to do any of that. And it was actually shortly before that, before we bought the fourplex, that we knew that, okay, we need a certain amount of passive income every month in order to be where we want to be, not work a W-2 job. I want my wife to be a stay-at-home mom. We don't have kids yet, but when we get there, I wanted to be able to do like exactly what you're saying, do the traveling, spend more time with the family on our own terms. And so I was realizing, okay, I'm going to have to buy like 100 single family properties or something crazy. And I said, and how long is it going to take me to do that? And so after putting everything together and then just looking at the pros and cons of single family versus multifamily versus all the other facets. I mean, it's not just single and multi. There's self-storage, there's office, there's retail, all the stuff. Just kind of really diving into what multifamily was as a whole, as far as an asset class. I really just clung to that and loved everything about it, because then it came back to what my actual passion was. We had the goals, but then my passion has always been it coincided with the goal of being financially free, but also educating others and how to do the exact same thing, how to become financially free, how real estate can do all these different things for them. And then I'm not only able to educate them with syndication, but I'm also able to provide opportunities for them to join me and generate, this generational wealth. And I was like, this is perfect. I can literally do everything I've ever wanted to do in this one niche and grow faster than I would have been able to had I stuck in single family. Like, why is everyone not doing this?
Yeah, or stuck with your W-2. And I love that you said that too, because that just speaks to you. I know you. We've been talking the last couple months and comparing notes and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think that just speaks to you as wanting to help people, provide opportunities. And I think when you make that little shift in your mind, like, I'm not asking for money, but I'm providing opportunities. It's just a foundational thought, like in syndication. And what you're saying about, like, it would take, you reverse engineered it. So you looked at what you needed to get to financial freedom and all that. You said, man, it's going to take 100 houses. Like, closing one house is honestly not that hard. Like, especially the second one, like, because it gets easier, but 100 of them, like, that's a lot of closing. That's a lot of time spent. And I think too many people get scared off the big numbers and like commercial multifamily. But think about it. That's like one closing process, albeit more in depth, and there's, more boxes to check and everything like that contained in the due diligence process. But then you go through that one time and then have all the cash flow, have all that under one roof, man. I love how your breakout of it, right? Because I think people get scared off by it, but I think if you look at what you want your life to look like, you can completely frame it within that investment strategy. And you can do it with multifamily too, or single family too, but I think multifamily has its benefits, thus this podcast.
Right. And then it's the simplicity of multifamily, because it takes just about the same amount of work to close a multifamily deal as a single family deal. And you've got way more units. You can depending on what your goals are, like with
and now
mine.
you know, because you've closed both.
Yeah.
I like it. So you got off and running off to a quick start. And I wanted to make this point because I read something recently. And have you read Hunter Thompson's book, the book on raising capital for real estate?
Hutch, a little shout out here. Hutch, the marine investor, told me about that maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I added it to my list, bought it, and I started reading it. And I can say I've been getting distracted from trying to close this deal, but I'm going to get back to reading that book.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you got it closed, things are calming down. I don't know, maybe not, but yeah, great book. But I read something there, make a note of, because I wanted to bring it up because I think you kind of exemplify this. So he says, in order to be successful, you have these key metric indicators, I think, or KMI is what he calls them, key momentum indicators. And he says that, like, number one is a sense of urgency to accomplish your goals. And number two is a high speed of execution and implementation. So I think you had both of those, and that's what allowed you to get to this deal. And I think that's what everybody listening needs to take away from this is to look at Josh and say, in the last 3 years, he's like just right before his 24th birthday, just closed this 42 unit complex because he had a sense of urgency to accomplish his goals, that he was talking about his life and his family, what he wanted that to look like. And then the high speed of execution and implementation by going after it, finding a good mentor, doing the research, educating himself and going. Like, what do you think about that? Did you ever think about those things, or was it just like, go, go, go?
For me, it was always just, I had to get there. I had to do whatever it took to get there. And you make it sound like it was such a short amount of time. But to me, it feels like it's been ages. Like I've been just struggling and pushing forward. And you listen to all these podcasts, you read all these books, and you hear these crazy success stories of people being like, yeah, man, I've only been into multifamily for like 6 months, 8 months, a year. And I already got 150, 200 units.
Oh man, you see it all the time.
What the heck? How does that happen? And then you start to get discouraged. And so it takes a balance of continuing to educate yourself and being.
I'm smiling so big because I walked you backwards into this, and I wanted this to come out.
being happy, I guess, and for these other people's successes, but then also staying true to where it is that you're headed. So I guess in a roundabout way, I didn't necessarily see it as exactly what he said, but if you think about it, or if I think about it now, I guess maybe I did, just because I knew I've always been very goal oriented. I haven't been good always at like writing goals down and making sure that every single goal gets accomplished and blah, blah, blah. But
distance and chasing.
Right. I've always been a huge big picture person. And my wife is a very like today, maybe tomorrow person. So we balance each other out. I'm like looking 5-10 years down the road, and she's like, what about today? Can we hang out today? And so she's balancing me from there. But
I get the same thing. But yeah, just I said all that to make the point, like, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to have grit. And I remember in my football locker room at the Air Force Academy, there was this sign on the wall, and it was called Pounding the Rock. And it wasn't about, we were a run team. It wasn't about that necessarily, about pounding the rock down the field, but about literally just taking a sledgehammer or like a pickaxe and hitting this big boulder just repeatedly. And do you think that big rock, that boulder, is going to split after one swing of the hammer? No, but after you just swing it, it just makes little micro cracks, and eventually it cracks. So that was the whole thing about pounding the rock, was keep swinging, have grit, have persistence. And at the end, you can achieve your goal, which I don't know why you want to beat up a boulder, but it's an old proverb. So we took that from it.
Love it.
But yeah, no, man, that's good stuff. So I'm glad we brought all that up, and it takes time. It takes persistence, but like in a relatively, I'm talking relative, like you can accomplish your goals sooner. Like you don't have to, I don't know. So many people think they have to get more. But I think it's important to note, like this wasn't your first deal, right? This was, you had that fourplex and you had that experience. So can you talk like just briefly how having that experience closing the, smaller multifamily property helped you get to that next level, built confidence, whatever it was?
Yeah, I think if I hadn't have done that fourplex deal way back when, I don't think I'd be where I am today, just from a sheer standpoint of being taken seriously by other investors, brokers, lenders, people looking at you and you being like, yeah, I'm a real estate investor. It's like, okay, what have you invested in? Well, nothing. I'm trying to close 50, 100 unit deals. And it's like, no, get out of here. You've never done anything before. So you have to begin building that track record of success in order to even be seen as what you're saying you are. You might think you have the identity of a real estate investor, but you've never invested in real estate. Are you really a real estate investor? So
that's good. Cause it's small successes that stack up on each other in rapid fashion. And I heard this story. I can't remember who it was from. But they got this call, or they called a broker. The broker answered the phone, was like respectful and all that. He's like, hey, I'm a real estate investor looking to get into this market, and, multifamily guy. And he's like, dude, the broker, he's like, dude, you know how many calls of these I get a week? Like, go close something, like have something to show me, and then call me back when you do. And was just blunt. It wasn't disrespectful, but it was just very blunt. And sure enough, this guy did a deal, came back, and he's like, all right, you've done something now. And it was a smaller deal. It wasn't the size of what he, first wanted, but you get that one small success and then build up. So I thought that was really good. Like, hey, call me when you got something. Yeah, literally, man. It builds. Yeah.
And that was kind of the struggle I had from just trying to go from the fourplex to something larger. We've never done anything larger. You don't really, you've done this fourplex, but the track record isn't, you haven't done anything big. You don't have any Fannie Freddie experience. What is your ability to raise capital? What's your ability to actually close? Then some sellers, if you're trying to go direct to seller on a larger deal instead of going through a broker, they're not taking you seriously either, because they're also looking at your track record.
They're saying the same thing. But that's where, having partners that you can rely on, fill your experience gap, and also mentor helps you, right? Because you say, so-and-so is my mentor. I'm working with them. They're helping me on this deal. And it's like, they recognize that name or know that person. And now it kind of elevates you a little bit off the, bottom of their shoe. Yeah.
That's another funny story. I was talking to one broker and he was giving me the similar spiel, like what you were saying, close something and get back to me. He didn't say those words verbatim, but that was where he was kind of leaning towards, of just beating around the bush. Like, I don't really have anything, blah, blah. Well, at the end of the phone calls, I was one last ditch effort of hey, well, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I mentioned Jeremy. I mentioned my mentor, Jeremy Hands. And he was like, oh, I know Jeremy. We've done some deals together, blah, blah, blah. And then we get off the phone call and dude sends me 5 deals. It's so those deals were there the whole time. You just didn't want to give them to me until I name drop someone.
Yeah. It's not true though. The strength of, the team or the mentor or whatever becomes a strength of everybody associated. If you got a bad actor, it could be the same thing. So that's why it's really important to surround yourself with the right people. So that's a really good point there. Did this end up being the broker you closed with?
No, because we actually didn't have a broker deal on this 42 unit because it was direct to Jeremy, because Jeremy was the one selling it. He actually gave us he gave us a $400,000 discount if we didn't go through a broker and if we were able to close by the end of 2020. We were like, bet.
that was the purpose for the scramble at the end. I love it. And you guys did it, man. So that's awesome. So before I waste any more time, me talking, let's get in this deal. I want to talk about this, break this thing apart. So just starting off, where's this thing at?
Well, it's in Citronelle, Alabama, which is about 20 to 30 minutes north of Mobile. But it kind of feeds off of the Mobile market. We found it through Jeremy. He's had it for 3 to 4 years. And I think their goal initially was to hold it, the standard 5-year hold period, but they were in a bad partnership with a couple of guys. It was one of the few beginning deals he did in Mobile. Jeremy and his partner, Bob. And so they were all partnered with the couple of guys that they said he just kind of turned sour, and they were just kind of ready to get rid of it. And so they were wanting to sell it January, February of this year. And they were going to do it through a broker. And it was going to be, like I was saying, at the $400,000 price higher because there was a broker, as well as because they were going to have done some renovations. This is also pre-double hurricane hit to the property. So who knows where they would have been had we not had it.
Before the 2 hurricanes that hit summer in that area.
That was another just big shabacle. So we ended up putting out our LOI. He kind of gave us some terms of what he was wanting. We looked it over. It looked freaking awesome. We were like, yeah, let's do it.
Wait, he gave you the LOI?
No, so we gave him the LOI, but
Okay,
the initial conversation was just, hey, are you interested?
yeah.
These are the terms we would be interested in if you can do it at this timeline and without needing a broker. And if you do need a broker and you can't close until later or whatever, then this is going to be the price. And we're like, oh, no brainer. We will figure it out.
We'll close by this date.
Right. If it means we can get the better end of the deal. And so, yeah, put it under LOI and then under contract shortly thereafter. And that was our first milestone because we had put a ton of properties under LOI previous to that.
Yeah.
Probably like 200 or 300 units under LOI previous to that. And they all fell through. You know, it's just something always happens. You never know.
I've been the same way, man. It's tough, especially in like a really competitive market. Like when we were talking about earlier, like everybody's calling brokers, like trying to do multifamily deals, especially markets like Mobile or here in Panama City, wherever. Like it's tough to find deals for sure. So I know how that
is. And so it was great to be able to go direct to the seller, not have to actually get any kind of pocket listings, like the definition of a pocket listing, right to the guy that owns the property. And so it was interesting though, because we never closed a large deal. So not having a broker to go through, we didn't have that list of kind of processes and procedures that we needed to accomplish in order to get to closing. So that was when all of my education and my partner's education of what the multifamily space was and the syndication space was as a whole, and real estate as well, of how the closing process works and maybe, you know, what kind of inspection we need to get and how we need to look at the CapEx budget, how we need to go about raising, how we need to do the analysis. And I was more the analysis guy because my partner has been in real estate for about a decade, but he had always done like house flips and he did a single family syndication portfolio thing, which is very interesting. That was how we actually like clicked, was like, oh, you've syndicated something before? He's like, yeah, it's a single family portfolio. It's like, interesting. I didn't even know that was an option. And so anyhow, that's kind of what happened on that front. And then
that's good stuff. Before we get any further, just like the basics of what kind of property is it, like how many units, that kind of setup.
Okay, so yeah, it's multifamily assets, probably C minus, probably in about a C plus area, maybe B minus area. 42 units, and we paid 1.85 for it.
Okay, very cool. And just for those listening, can you break down like the classes you're just talking about, so you can so people can kind of get a feel of the kind of property and the kind of area it is?
Right. So you got A, B, C, and D class. A is the exquisite brand new construction. It's probably like 10 years old. It's got all the nice amenities you could ever even imagine, like a spa where someone rubs your toes. And then you got B class. That's a little lesser than that, but it's probably more on the average side of probably B and C class is more on the average side of what the working class can afford.
B being toe rubbers in the B class.
No toe rubbers there. It's still nice though. It's in a nice area, typically somewhere in the suburbs, maybe in a downtown area or midtown area. Same with C class. You'll probably see some in the midtown, downtown area, maybe not, or in some outskirts of a suburb somewhere. And that'll be a little bit more distressed, but definitely working class. That's kind of where we play, B and C class, the typical value add syndicators. And then D class is like the projects where you don't really want to be out there.
Yeah. Stay away unless you want to like carry a pistol on you in most places.
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's good. It shows people, you know, that because you're doing value add, you're going to put a lot of CapEx into this thing. Like that B and C class is usually the best asset class or property class to do that in, because class A, usually there's not much value to add. That's more of a low cap rate, low return, kind of like a insurance company or REIT or something like that. Like Grant Cardone's will buy the big properties, the nice ones like that, and get lower returns. But there's meat on the bone in these a little bit older properties that need some repairs. Doesn't got hit by 2 hurricanes, so I'm sure it needs some repairs, but it's still standing. And so just kind of give an idea about that. And you said for 42 units and you paid 1.85 for it.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha. That's good. Pretty good price per unit there. So talking about the raise, getting into that, to get to that 1.8, what did the raise look like? What did you guys have to bring?
So we initially thought we were going to have to bring 650. But then after further calculation, the further we got into it, we decided we only needed 605. That extra 45 was really just like an extended buffer that was just diluting everyone for no reason. So we lowered it to 605, and from the get-go, right out the gate, we had already been raising money previous to this. So I guess let me back up a little bit. Back in July of this year, I did a 30-day to 500K challenge, which you did too, right?
500K challenge, yeah. I'm actually going on Bill's podcast. It was supposed to be tomorrow or Wednesday, but now next week about like taking that challenge and the results of it. So
yeah, shoot, yeah, man. Congrats. So yeah, I did the challenge back in July. And, you know, it was only supposed to be up to 500K. You know, there's teaching.
I think you blew it out, man. He should have asked you to come on, not me. I actually raised like that number, but
teaching you how to raise money, teaching you how to do the thing. And I never thought anything of it. Previous to this, I'd only raised about 150,000 ish. And that was from the fourplex. And really, that was it. That was all the money raising experience I had. Never thought myself as much of a capital raiser. So always saw myself as more of just a people person, investor relations kind of guy. Well, anyway, did the challenge. At the end of 30 days, raised $6 million. And I say raised $6 million, and that doesn't mean that I had the money in my bank waiting to buy a Ferrari. It just means that I got verbal commitments from people trusting me enough to say, yeah, I've got this money liquid and available for an investment, and I would trust you to give it to invest in a deal if it met my specifications. That's where the $6 million
kind of gives you like as a way of thinking, it kind of gives you like a soft commit number where it tells you, okay, you know, best case scenario, everybody's in good mood and all that.
Right.
How much money, right? So probably think like half of that, maybe people that are like really going to do it. And then like half of that are people that are going to end up investing. So, you know, 600 or 6 million, that's a lot of capital raised in those 30 days. That's really impressive. So for that, I mean, we're not even into the race for the deal specifically yet, but I mean, for those listening, how do you even go about doing that? Because I think, and I going through the 30 days, the 500K challenge, I had the same thing. I was like, man, that's a lot of money. And I only got like 30 days to do this. So what was your steps to do it?
So I really just followed what Bill was saying. I think he was a great teacher. I think the videos were very helpful, and I really just followed it pretty much to a T. So he gave a video every day, and the very first day, paid the $100, was excited for this video, like, oh, I'm going to raise all this money. What do I need to do? And he says, you got to go live on Facebook once a day for 30 days. And I'm like, so previous to the challenge, I was social media, like, I don't even know what the word would be for it, but I did not like social media. I hardly ever got on Facebook. I didn't even have an Instagram.
I was right there with you.
I had a LinkedIn, but I never got on it. And so he said live every day on social media. I'm like, because then at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to be, first of all, what am I going to say? Then second of all, I feel like I'm going to be begging other people for money. And then they're going to think I'm just one of those salesy pyramid schemes. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that like as a brand. And so I had to get over that mindset. There was a couple more videos after that talked about mindset and that you actually are providing an opportunity. And
yeah, so that's what I was saying earlier. I mean, that was perfect. It's like, I think it came out of that specifically, or maybe it's like getting the money by Susan Lasser lines, but it's like you're presenting opportunity. And Bill just reiterated this, and you're right. He's like, he's such a good teacher. It's like, you have the opportunity. Without you, their money sitting, you know, in a savings account making like 1% or less, right?
Right.
So to go to like, you know, 10%, 15%, whatever it is in a syndication, that's a big time difference.
Yeah. And so it was really just getting over that hurdle. And so I started doing these videos, and he said, you know, talk about you, talk about your faith, talk about your hobbies, talk about your business, talk about your dog. Like, it doesn't matter. Just talk about something, be present, be there. So people are seeing you every day. Plus it kind of played in account with like the social media algorithms and more people actually being able to see you and your posts. And so after about a week, I started seeing a little bit of traction, started seeing some more people interested, asking me questions. Hey, what is syndication? What do you mean you raise money? Buying apartments, that's really big. That's cool, man. Like some people didn't really care. They just wanted to say it was cool. And whatever, I'm off of that. And so then after people started really contacting me, then it was like, okay, what do you say? People call you and they're like, hey, I see you raising money to buy apartments. You know, I'm interested. How does that work? You know, if I gave you $100,000, where's my money going to go? And you're like, well, and so you had to have this, I don't want to say like speech, but you had to have something put together to where you knew the questions to say and you knew how to iterate it.
Yeah, it's just preparing. Like for anything else, you got to have your crap together and know what you're raising money for. If somebody asks you like, hey, what's going to happen to my money? And you don't know how to answer that question, you probably should not be raising money.
Exactly. And so after having these conversations and asking all the right questions of goal orient, like what exactly are your goals? If you give me this money, he says, if a tree falls on your house tomorrow, are you going to be asking for this money back because you don't want to use your emergency savings? And what are your actual goals? Where actually is the money? Asking all those questions. And then that's where they gave you a number. Like, this is what I'll be willing to invest if the right deal came along. You're like, okay, cool, great. I'll add you to the list and I'll keep you posted if anything happens. And then right before you hang up, I always asked for a referral. And without a doubt, the referrals is what got me to 6 million. At the end of the phone call, I always asked if there's like, hey, do you know anyone else that might be interested in an opportunity like this? And most people are like, if you're already giving them this opportunity to invest for them, then they feel like it's then a part of the law of reciprocity. They're like, oh yeah, I know a guy who's got some money, blah, blah, blah. And they introduce you to another guy, give you that warm introduction.
And what a powerful thought, right? Like this is where I struggled in that whole 500K challenge I got towards the end. I was like, shoot, man, I gotta start asking for more referrals. And it actually, it paid off. It worked and money came from that. So if the listeners took nothing else from this show, it's like, if you're talking to them about investment opportunities and, showing them what you're doing, right? Showing them your progress and raising money. Like at the end, like literally before hanging up, like, hey, before we get off the phone, do you know anybody else who'd be interested in something like this? And then think about it, because if I say, if we never met before and I say, hey, Josh, I'm investing in real estate. Do you want to, invest in one of my deals with me? You're like, I don't know this guy. Like, I don't know this opportunity. But if your best friend says, hey, here's Blake, he's doing this awesome stuff. Like, you get talked up by somebody you already know and you're comfortable with. Like, think of how much smoother the conversation goes, more smoothly.
Yeah, exactly.
So that friendly intro is huge, man. I'm glad you brought that up.
And that was a big key. And so I had one guy who I already knew who was like a home inspector, and he had 50 grand to invest. And I asked him at the end of it, the referral question. And he said, yeah, I got a guy I used to try to do a deal with like last year and ended up falling through, but he's kind of going to be our big money guy. I was like, oh, big money guy. And so he's in the oil and gas industry, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, do the warm introduction, have a phone call with this guy. At the end of that phone call, found out that dude had $3 million to invest. And I was like, this is unreal. It's not even a number that I can fathom right now. I don't know what you're saying to me. Like, the wheels were like, my head was exploding. And so then at the end of that phone call, I asked the same referral question, and he had another guy who had 2 million. And so really the majority of the 6 million came from two people. And the other million came from a conglomerate of about 25 to 30 people.
And if you never ask that question, you just have an opportunity cost of 5 million you left just floating out there.
Right.
That's crazy. Such a simple question. That's awesome, man. I get caught up in this and talk about it all day, but if you haven't, go check out Bill Allen's 500K challenge. You can probably search it. I think go to 500kchallenge.com. Like, it's still up there. It's like $100. At least it was when we did it. So worth it. Back to this deal. You're raising this money. You have a good head start because you started, months prior. But once you get into the deal structure, money's coming in for that $605,000 raise. What's the structure? Is it 70-30? Like, how did you structure it with your partners and with those passive investors?
There is no better asset class for building wealth than real estate. And in most instances, people don't have the time or energy to invest in it on their own. So how do you build wealth with real estate when you lack the time and energy? Leave that to the GrowthView Properties. The GrowthView team finds, negotiates, and manages multifamily assets for private investors. Their mission is to help investors secure the ultimate asset, which is time, all the while impacting the greater good with their endowment fund that fuels the mission of charitable organizations. Find out more by going to thegrowthview.com. That's view with a VUE.com. Put your money to work so you don't have to at thegrowthview.com.
So yeah, we put it at the 70-30. We put it at an 8% pref, which is just a fancy word for like an interest rate. You're almost guaranteed 8% year over year. And if not, it's a rollover pay. We don't do any fancy waterfalls.
This is the preferred return. So the first 8% return from the property goes straight to investors. And then after that, the 70-30 kicks in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of this. We kept it the standard structure. We didn't do any fancy waterfalls. We wanted to keep it simple, especially for our first deal. We wanted to make sure everyone understood, because a lot of people, when they're investing, if they don't understand it, they're just going to say no. So if you keep it simple, they will be more likely to, I mean, granted, they have to know I can trust you first and foremost, but if you also keep the investing and the deal itself as simplistic as possible, they're more likely to make the investment because they're understanding everything. So we just wanted to keep it simple. And I think that really helped us out a lot. But as far as actually raising the money, I thought I had a big head start. $6 million. Shoot. Like, I got that. We only got to raise 605. Just call my investors. Well, the two big money dudes had already invested, like, I called them and they had already invested like 57,000 in something else, or not thousand, million, 57 million in something else. And I said, holy cow, you only told me you had 5. You got 57.
Jeez, man.
So that was a whole.
Can you send me these guys' phone numbers when we're done?
Bro, that was a whole nother conversation. But they were like, if we hadn't already invested our money, you know, we would be in with you. But that was, and it was because back in July was when I raised the money. And then it wasn't until September-ish when we actually started needing the capital. And so it'd been a few months there. And they were like, well, we're not, you know, obviously with money like that, no one's just waiting around for this one person to bring a deal to them.
Yeah.
The better deal comes along and they're going to jump on it. So, I mean, it was a little bit of my lack of timing, and that's just the way that it works. That's why you build a huge list of investors. And so then I went to my other investors and it was the same thing, you know, not the right timing, you know, not trying to invest anything this year. I don't know what's happening with the economy, you know, trying to ease people into it, blah, 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 and making sure it's still good for them. And I was end up able to raise about 350,000. And then my partner, Reggie, raised the other 150,000. And then that put us at about 450-ish. And so then about 2 weeks prior to closing, this is sometime mid-November, we were scheduled to close December 1st.
That's getting tight.
We were like, well, shoot, we've already exhausted our list. We've talked to everyone we know. We're doing the 506B. We can't just blast it out on social media. So we're kind of stuck here. So that was when I talked to Jeremy and asked him if he was would be interested in getting in on the deal. And he didn't like the ethics of it being on both sides, seller and buyer. I understood. But then he connected us with Matt, who's now our third GP. And he ended up being a perfect fit. I mean, having done all the experience that he had, plus just kind of his personality, and we all kind of had the same vision statement. We were headed in the same direction. We're kind of in the same area, like investing in the same markets. I mean, it was like a no-brainer at that point. Yeah. And so I
like Matt. He's a good addition for sure.
Yeah, and then he jumped on. We only needed like 150 or 200,000, and he raised like another 600,000. And we were like, well, shoot, now we got to get another deal. We got all this extra money.
So this is where it rolled into is this where this rolled into the new one that's under contract?
Yeah. So then it wasn't, and we have been chasing the deal we have under contract now. We've been chasing for like 8 months. And so we finally got them to agree to it. And this was, 2 or 3 weeks prior to closing on this 42 unit. And we're like, heck yeah, now we've got a deal to roll their money over into. And so we're, putting everything together to get started on doing that. But that was kind of how the capital raising process went for that deal.
That's good. So, I mean, without setting those systems up beforehand, making those connections, maybe that first 300, 350 never comes. And then you're sitting in a bad position. But by finding, surrounding yourself with the right people, Reggie and Matt, they're able to bring the rest. But man, that's really awesome. There's a lot of good takeaways in there, like find the right people, build your list, make authentic relationships, get referrals. A lot of good just beginning capital raise techniques. And then you can get into digital marketing and click funnels and all this kind of stuff to build a list, which big time syndicators do. But man, that's just calling people, having relationships, which I really like with this deal that we're doing right now. We've got our money raised. It was the same way. 506B, just, talking to people that I've been building relationships with since, July when we did the 500K challenge. And even before that, when I read, I don't even know, I think it was Joe Fairless's book. It's start building relationships now because you can't get too much money, right? You can get, you can be inundated with deals where you don't have enough money, but if you got all those deals and can't capitalize them, you're going to not be able to close. And then the brokers or, the sellers you're dealing with are just going to write you off if you lock their property up for a couple months and then can't close this thing. So that's good stuff. So with this property, what's the plan now that it's closed? Like what's the overall strategy with it?
The big idea, there was about 5 to 6 units down that were unoccupied or uninhabitable, really. They were pretty badly torn up. So we'll bring those back online with some CapEx. We had some AC problems with a few of the units. So we're replacing some ACs, trying to do some preventative maintenance on the rest. We're adding a dog park. We're adding some a vending machine, some new laundry services. We're just kind of sprucing up a little bit of the landscaping, new signage. Plus, with the money we're getting from the insurance company, we're able to also get all new roofs, new siding, new exterior paint job.
This thing's like a big facelift.
The property is practically going to be brand new. And it's going to be huge for returns, especially since the majority of the CapEx that we're doing is coming from the insurance company. We didn't have to pay for it. So we're going to get, I really believe we're going to get a massive return on investment on this. But also a really cool thing that we liked about this deal from the get-go was two of the properties.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this. This is going to be the next question.
Two of the units are Airbnb. Now, you might be thinking, whatever, Airbnb, who cares?
And I'm like the Airbnb guy, so I love this, man.
Yeah.
I want to hear the breakdown, like how it's been going at the beginning, because I had the same vision when I was looking in this market, because I have Airbnb units here. I was like, if I buy a multifamily property, it would completely make sense and fit in with my strategy and my systems to make, a handful or less, like 2 into Airbnb units to boost returns, get more ROI, hit the, give a little boost to investors. So like, how's it working out for you that you guys have these 2 on the property?
Yeah. So Jeremy had these 2, these 2 Airbnbs, prior to us ever getting on there, and they had only had them for about a year. They had the first one for a couple months, and then they brought the second one online when they saw how well the first one was doing. And just in 2019, the Airbnbs brought in like $50,000 in additional income. And, typically
it's crazy what those things can bring in.
Where these C-class properties are, any one unit's bringing in about $500 to $600 a month. Now we've got 2 units bringing in 50 G's.
Yeah.
And so
about 6,000 a year to like 50,000.
Yeah. It is
both units combined. So they're both bringing in like 25.
Yeah. But it was really insane.
You're like 5X in your
and I couldn't believe it because the property's in Citronelle. So anyone that doesn't know Citronelle, it's a podunk town, and you really wouldn't. My partner calls it a small sleepy town.
Okay.
And I couldn't help but laugh. But when you think about it, it kind of is, because it's like population 5,000, population 6,000. And so your first question is, well, why the heck did you buy an apartment complex? Excuse me, in such small population and such a small market with maybe not the best, opportunity, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Like not Jacksonville or Tampa of the world or whatever.
Yeah. And so when he told us there was Airbnbs, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're not in a vacation spot. Who's Airbnbing? Why are people staying there? And at first it was like, well, it doesn't matter. But then it was like, yeah, it does. We're trying to buy this. We need to know the metrics of what is leading.
Yeah, what's bringing in your customers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we found out that they are the only nightly rental in that area, like within a 30-minute drive. Like there's no other hotel, no other motel, nothing. These are the only place that's furnished that people can stay per night. And so they're booked up.
Monopoly on the market there.
They're booked up month over month over month, even through the hurricanes. Right after the first hurricane, it wasn't super. The second hurricane was worse on the property than the first one, but the worst one still knocked the power out, knocked some trees down. Still harder to get to the to the actual property because of the damage to power lines and everything else. But this guy was already scheduled to go to one of the Airbnbs the day after the hurricane, well before we knew a hurricane was going to hit. And so I called the day after the hurricane hit and was like, hey, what's going on with the properties? Everything okay? Blah, blah, blah. And he was giving me an update from what the property manager told him, and everything was good. And I said, what about the Airbnbs? Is there a bunch of cancellations? What's going on? And he said, well, actually, we've got a guy that's coming in today, the day after the hurricane. And he called the property manager after the hurricane and said, hey, I'll still be there tomorrow. I'll be there for 3 weeks and I'm bringing my own generator. It's like, what the heck? This guy's bringing his own generator and he's staying there for 3 weeks. Why are these properties in such high need and no one has?
They had nowhere else to go. It's perfect.
No one has resolved this issue. So it was just like, this is a no-brainer. Obviously, these are bringing in a ton of money. We might even open up a third one or a fourth one. We'll see how it goes. But the Airbnbs alone were bringing in bukus of money, and it's just nothing but opportunity there.
Yeah, it's honestly impressive. Like I have 7 of them now, and even in the low season, they're way outperforming my long-term rentals just on a gross revenue number. The expenses are obviously higher, like the expense ratio, but still your net number is just, insanely above. Like I was able to surpass my W-2 income in a year through this. So I love the fact that you incorporated this into actual multifamily property. And I have a buddy in my military mastermind who he focuses on this as the operator. So he's just like the property manager and the provider for these big apartment complexes and makes their units into short-term rentals. So I know there's a market for it. And then when I heard that, I was like, man, I could just buy property and make like 2 units this. And you even had help because that revenue could be counted. Actually, I want to know this. Did your lender count that revenue for the appraisal, or did it not matter?
They did not count it towards the appraisal. The way they had the rent roll set up was that the Airbnbs were bringing in $1 a month. I was like, who wrote this? Why are we writing?
They just underwrote them as like not providing anything, even though you had financial.
So they had it underwritten, or the appraiser had it underwritten at $1 a month, bringing in $12 a year. And I was like, first of all, these are bringing in $50,000 combined, but we're not asking you to write that in as the appraisal.
And then $12 a year at a 10 cap, that's like $120 of value you're at. That's
So then he said, okay, well, how about we just write it in as a standard rental, like saying that it's occupied, bringing in since these are,
at least
I think these are
value.
2-2s. So whatever the standard 2-2 was renting for in that complex, which I think is like $600 a month. We'll just say that these 2 are bringing in $600 a month, and we'll go from there. And so just doing that on those 2 units brought the value of the property up by like $200,000. And so,
when you're talking about the multifamily valuation, it's much better, I think. Anyway, that's great. I was curious how that value would play in, especially if it's in your hold period and you need to refinance based off that valuation. But my thought was it might not even matter, because if you're, imagine a typical 5-year hold period, or a 5-year hold period, and you got to refinance in year 3 or whatever it is after your value add. Maybe for years, 2 through 3, you make some Airbnb units and they produce higher cash flow, increasing the higher return. Right. But then you get them underwritten as that, and the value's still up because the property's now producing more overall. So you still get a little kick in the cash flow. But that'd be interesting to see if, in the future, lenders will provide value based on the actual income, because short-term rentals with Airbnb public now, I think it makes a lot more sense and is a lot more viable today than it was, a couple months ago.
That could very well be, but I know our banker was like, hey man, less is more. Let's just not tell the bank that we are Airbnb-ing 2 of the properties out. Let's just pretend like they're standard rentals, because they want to see that concrete, steady income, and it's just from the sheer standard.
Those are the most risk adverse institutions ever.
Yeah. And so we said, okay, if that's how they want to see it, but we know we're making 50 G's, then they can see it that way.
Yeah. As long as the investors see it, we're all good, man. That's
right. So then when we actually underwrote it, it's funny you mentioned that. We didn't actually tell the investors that we were making 50 G's. We just cut it in half.
So you produced your return metrics without that extra income.
For our conservative underwriting, we said, we know that we can make 50 G's based on, the last T12, but we're going to underwrite it saying we're going to make an extra 25. We'll just cut it in half. And then
that's good. And then somebody, asks about it. Yeah, here's this extra return. They're like, oh man, they actually are conservative. And you could do that with, laundry income. If you don't want to do Airbnb, right. You can do that with, vending machine income, all of which you have on the property, adding to the NOI. So I love it, man. That's a good deal. A lot of good stuff in there, but I want to transition now into the Fortune 5. I think there's still some good stuff to pull out. So let's get into it.
Fortune 5.
First question. What is the biggest thing that's contributed to your success?
The biggest thing contributed to my success, I'm going to have to say, is persistence. There's been too many times, way too many times that I have failed miserably. And I won't say that the fourplex was a miserable failure, but I will say that it was not what it could have been. It probably wasn't the best investment. Probably wasn't the best thing to do right off the bat, not really having a lot of money, but I grew a lot. And then just from that failure moving forward, and then the next failure moving forward, and all the brokers telling you no, investors telling you no, just continuing to see that vision and that end goal of where you want to be and actually going after it and not giving up.
Pound the rock, baby. I love it.
Pound the rock.
And too, like that first deal, doesn't have to make you money. If it gains you experience and grows just your knowledge, that's worth it. As long as you don't go bankrupt.
Right.
And that's good. So second question, and I'm going to tailor this a little bit. It's usually, what's your biggest mistake so far that's turned into a learning lesson? But since we're talking about this deal, what was the biggest mistake on this deal, or any deal that's turned into a learning lesson? I guess I got less broad than more broad.
Biggest mistake on the most recent deal we closed?
Yeah. You still, obviously it still worked out, but what thing would you have changed if you could go back, make this thing easier for you?
If I could go back, I would have hoped to have been able to raise more capital. I would have hoped to have had a broader bandwidth of investors and opportunity and just track record overall. But everyone's got to start somewhere. I get that. I know I had to start somewhere, and not having a massive rap sheet of I've raised millions of dollars and I've done this and I've done that. And look at all these units I have.
Yeah, and it snowballs too, right? It snowballs.
Yeah. And so it was just, that would have helped a lot. Not to say that it was a mistake per se, because we did just bring on another GP and that helped everything. And it ended up being a blessing in disguise. But if I had to do it over and I didn't know, Matt, you know what I mean? I didn't know that was going to be the outcome, then I probably would have had more access to capital.
Good lesson. Get your capital stack right. Hey,
right.
So what's been your favorite book that you would recommend for someone starting out?
I actually did a post about this right at the end of last year. It was like a 10-day LinkedIn challenge that some Yona Weiss, I think, was doing on LinkedIn. And I did a post on what book last year made the most massive impact. Not only the best book that I read, but the book that actually impacted my life that I put into action last year. And it had to be Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership.
Ooh, man, I've heard so many good things about it, and it's on my list, but I'm going to write it down to put it higher up my list, because
that book was life-changing. Not only in business of just taking ownership of failures and having multiple exit strategies and different plans to do things, but also in your relationship and every life. Since I don't have any kids, I know a lot of people used it with their kids too, and they said that's been extremely helpful, but I just have my wife. And so just taking ownership of, when you get in an argument and something happens, it's just you're right, or maybe she's not right, or maybe, it's just my fault, whatever it is.
Put it on you, and then you can do something to fix it later. Yeah, that's I've been in that boat. So I definitely need to read that. Make my home life a little bit better. No, man. And Jocko's he's just a solid dude, man. He is legit. I saw him in person at Flip Hacking Live, and he looks like he just crush me. And I was a D1 football player, but he looks like he could have his way with me. But
he is a fantastic speaker and just overall mindset guy. One of the examples he gave in the book, because a big thing that people say is, how do you take extreme ownership for everything? What if the weather changes? I can't control the weather. What if this happens? I can't control that. And he's like, well, you really can't control everything in a way. And one of his examples was he was out on deployment somewhere, and they had to do some kind of infiltration or breach into the city or into something. And it was a big sandstorm or something that came through, and they couldn't go up in the helicopters or in the vehicles to do their breach that day. And so he said, hey, well, that's on me. That's my fault. And his guys were like, well, how's that your fault? It's a sandstorm. He said, well, I should have had another another strategy of what we could do. Like we should have
accounted for the sandstorm before.
Yeah. Like we should have built a tunnel to get there, or we should have had like a stealth helicopter that can withstand sandstorms. Like there's always something that could be, or that is your fault that you didn't plan for. So the reason it didn't happen.
A lot of people just don't want to take that ownership, man. So
I know
I got to read that book because like, especially in like the military and like leadership, that's a good book. I got it on my list. I wrote it down.
Yeah, do it, man.
Hey, so what outside of real estate, what do you like doing outside of real estate? You know, when you're not closing deals and chasing down money and everything else? What's your hobbies?
So hobbies is probably shooting. Actually got my pistol right here.
Oh, shoot, man. You got a concealed carry permit for that thing or what?
Yeah, I got a concealed carry permit. I've got a 270 and a 12 gauge. I don't have enough guns, man. I need more.
You need to start buying D-class properties and just walk around with your gun and scare people into paying rent and not doing drugs and stuff.
Right. And if I had to pick another hobby, it would be aviation. Aviation has always been an extreme passion of mine. That's why I got into it in the first place as a W-2 job fixing airplanes. But it kind of lost its hobby sense, being that it became the way that I make money and I have forced to go there and fix these airplanes. So I want to bring it back as a hobby and go obviously full-time multifamily syndication, get out of the W-2 job. And I want to get my pilot's license and hopefully buy an airplane today.
Oh man, I like that. Yeah. The chef doesn't always want to come home and cook dinner, you know? So it's
right.
When you do what you love for work, but like in real estate, man, I think you're the same way. Like I just love what I do. So I'm like super engaged in it, and
right.
doing deals just fires me up. So man,
it's not even work
for that same way. Cause it just makes everything so much easier.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, man. Last question, the Fortune 5, where can people find out more about you or connect with you?
Well, you can check me out on Facebook. I think it's just Josh Ferrari or Joshua Ferrari. You can check me out on LinkedIn. Same thing, Josh Ferrari. Our business name is Ferrari Capital. So you can go to ferraricapital.com, check out our website. We've got a free ebook on there that tells you all about the ins and outs of how multifamily syndication deal works. We've got a blog on there. We've got our own podcast called Creative Capital. We also write
on there. It's good stuff.
Yeah, we also write.
Go leave Josh a rating and review too. He will appreciate it.
Oh, that would be great. We also have a newsletter that goes out once a month to all of our investors, just to kind of update you on what's going on in the market specifically, as well as some kind of educational piece of information. And that goes out typically via email, but we're considering doing it via mail here soon.
Oh man, getting real with it. I like it. I think you can also go to Ferrari.com and see pictures of Josh just cruising down the California coast and all the different color Ferraris. So
yeah, I don't know about all that, but maybe one day.
Yeah, man, go check Josh out. He's doing awesome stuff. Got the next deal in the works and just snowballing this into many more successes. So Josh, man, thanks for sharing everything and just being transparent with like the successes and the challenges with this deal. I think like if you just show like, oh yeah, we closed our deal, you know, went so smooth, and now we're doing the next one, and you know, we're gonna close on a property on the moon tomorrow. Like this is the real stuff people need to hear. Like raising money is hard. Like finding properties that need work and being able to execute on that is hard. Like dealing with insurance companies is hard. So there's challenges there. And I think just by listening through the stuff and listening to your stuff, reading the newsletters and everything like that, man, that's what can really lower or flatten people's curves. So thanks for sharing all that on here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is actually my second time ever being interviewed by someone else. So
yeah.
The first is the worst, second's the best, you know. So
hey,
here
man,
we are.
Yeah, this good. Yeah, this was good. You did a great job. You came and showed out and pounded the rock one more time.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
All right, man. We're out of here with Josh, the best name in multifamily Ferrari. Hey, thanks for listening. If you like the show, if you found value in it, please go to iTunes and leave a rating and review. And if you want to check out more on your multifamily journey, go to multifamilyjourney.com, where you can get free resources to start your journey and figure out your path. That's multifamilyjourney.com. But more importantly, go take action today towards your financial future. See you next time.